This is part 2 of the Bruce Lee methodology extravaganza. And I think last time my emphasis was much, well, it's not much more, but I guess equal parts like teaching and learning. But I guess because of certain methodology conversations over shiurs, I feel like my mind is going to go much more methodology of learning directions. So just giving you a forewarning here. Yeah. Okay. So I think we're on. Yeah. By which of the that's. I guess we'll find out. Won't we? Unless you have a specific. What do you mean?
What do you mean by methodology?
Oh, meaning methodology of learning. I guess. Yeah. How to learn. Yeah.
I guess I don't know what you mean by that in the practice.
I guess we'll find out. Yeah. Okay. So I think we're on page 2, and we either read the one that begins knowledge is fixed in time, or we were about to read that one. But actually, I'm going to reiterate it again because I think this relates to our Mishlei review this morning. Okay, so knowledge is fixed in time, whereas knowing is continual. Knowledge comes from a source, from an accumulation, from a conclusion, while knowing is a movement.
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, what do you think he means by that?
I'm not sure, but I felt like that was like a direct commentary.
Yeah, so you want to elaborate? Or should I elaborate because I was in one conflict?
You go on.
So this morning, I felt like we started our super hyper ultra mega meta Mishlei review, and I felt like it was weird because you remember the ideas very well, and I have that experience with Mishlei ideas that I've taught many times. But I think because we learned so many ideas over the course of the year, and because it was a long time ago, I felt like there was an artificiality of like trying to go back and like pick up frozen fragments of ideas and then like revive them. Whereas opposed to the actual process of learning Mishlei, I feel like I'm tapping directly into the source of the thinking and the learning, and the ideas are emerging from this like living process. So that's what I think he's. I mean, obviously he's dissing knowledge here, right? I mean, but he's saying knowing is like the real thing, and yeah. So that's how I associated with this morning. But what was your take?
It was something to
Right. And again, I know I probably said this last time, but Rabbi Moskowitz, because he didn't have a good memory, it would always got it, nice. It would always be knowing. Like it always felt like knowing. It always felt like he was just engaged in that process of thinking it through on the spot. And the same thing with Socrates. Like Socrates never quotes ideas, right? It's the learning and understanding is coming from the discussion that's happening like right now, you know?
Is it knowing? Does he mean? Oh, sorry, knowledge. Does he mean like you're thinking through memory? Like
I think it's related to memory because that's how you get it, or that's how it's stored, you know.
Okay. But as opposed to like, okay, but let's making you like remember an idea and know it, like you still know the idea. Like I'm not sure. Yeah.
Know in the sense of knowing, or know in the sense of knowledge.
I'm confused. Like what exactly? I'm not sure what these things are.
Well, you do know the difference when you arrive at an idea through your own learning process,
Yeah.
versus when you recall it. Like, does that register in your mind as different?
Okay,
yeah, right.
Oh, so okay, yeah, that's what I'm asking for.
Yeah. So when you recall it, it is you are reaching into the past. Like the idea might be something that you have on your mind or whatever, but you're reaching into the past to get it.
Right.
So this is one of the things that I do struggle with in terms of Judaism and Bruce Lee, which is obviously Masorah and like knowledge is a big thing, you know, and like we are, you know, the whole system of mitzvot and Talmud Torah. I mean, there's knowing also, but like we are working with past concepts and like zecher to stuff, you know. But there's that Rashi though that I think is the antidote to that. You know what Rashi I'm gonna quote?
Yeah. Maybe everything is like snakes.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I think it's in the second paragraph of the Shema, right? Right, that I command you today. Right, my mitzvahs that I command you today. So Rashi says there, that's on in Vayikra Yud Aleph. Yud Gimel. So he says, no, did I say Vayikra? I meant Devarim. Yeah. Where is it here? I'm pretty sure it's here. Yeah. Oh, this is a different one than the one.
I feel like there's
Yeah, this is not the one I was thinking of. Does it say Hayom in V'haya im Shemo, or in
Yeah.
V'hafta?
yeah.
In V'hafta? Okay, so maybe it's on that one. Let me check that one. That's in Kanan. 6:5. Uh, uh, yeah, that's probably the one I was thinking of. Yeah. Fair enough. Misal Hayom. Lo yihu be'enecha kidiotagma yeshana she'en adam sofna. It shouldn't be like an old edict or an old like decree that a person doesn't. I don't know how to translate sofna.
And
If you want to look, I don't know if it's I feel like it's like rabbinic Hebrew. Samech, yeah, Samech Vav Fe. Like I think like look forward to, but I'm even thinking of like Sofa. Maybe I'm thinking of Sofa. I don't know. Anyway, Ella Kehadasha should be like a new one. Shakol Ratin Likrasa that people run to read. And then the one that I thought I was quoting is on Mitzvah Eschem Hayom Shiyu Alechem Hadashim Ilu Shematim Bo Vayom, as if you heard them that day. You know, so it seems like that's the solution, right? Is that like you're obviously learning and remembering stuff. I don't want to put anything you're obviously like learning and remembering stuff, but the trick is to approach it with a fresh mind, you know, and that's gonna be the best of both worlds because you have ideas that you know are reliable that are from the Masorah or that have been vetted by Chachamim, but your mind, the trick is for your mind to encounter it and have it.
Safna is storage or form.
Okay, yeah, I don't think that's it.
How are you actually supposed to do this? You can't be constantly go over everything.
Yeah, I know. That's the trick, right? And that's the trick that we also run into when we review. You know, is like how much like you want to allow new insights to come in, but there's like a process of reviewing. You know.
I guess I'd say it's you want it to be like a living idea, not just like a recalling it.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what does that mean? That is a living idea.
I'm just listening. It seems like we had a different experience this morning.
Yeah.
Like you described it as being like a frozen like crystallized idea.
Right.
The way it was, the way that I was experiencing it was like, was that I was re-experiencing learning it like an accelerated.
Right. So I think that happens. I mean, that happens with ideas that are just closer in time, and maybe it's a function of memory. I mean, maybe the fact that like your memory of these ideas was better allowed the freshness to allow it to retain its freshness, you know, whereas because like I would relate to that if we did an idea like earlier this week, I would relate to it that way, you know.
Yeah, so like are we making a distinction here between like recalling something like just like something that's stored in your memory versus like recalling an idea that you came to the conclusion with like your own like meaning is there a distinction there? Because
That's a
like
good question.
there's the difference between like having a like in time like present experience
Yeah.
of like using your own mind to come up with an idea.
Yeah.
But then there's also recalling the time you used your mind to come up with an idea and like it stuck with you.
Right. So one differentiation, that's a good question. One differentiation I would say is it doesn't even necessarily mean that you had to have originated the idea. Because I think if you are in a shiur and you witness the idea emerging from the shiur, then it registers in your mind in a similar way.
Right.
You know?
But so that process, meaning versus
Right.
just like a stored fact, which
Right.
doesn't arise in the same, like maybe
Right.
you memorized it, maybe you
Yeah.
stored it, and like you're referring back to that.
Yeah.
But then there's a difference when you're referring back to a spur and share that like you saw the whole process and like it made in intuitive sense in your
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah. Right. But what I'm wondering now also is like, yeah, that yes, that is the distinction. Yeah, I can't express this thought right now. Yeah.
Can I just like a philip between what's going on in Torah and what
Yeah.
you're talking about? That I think there is another element. Like, yeah, obviously, all these ideas are true about Torah.
Yeah.
But then there's another element in Torah which we didn't have to deal with, which is that like you have to perpetuate the Masorah.
Right.
So that's like, in that sense, like you sort of when you're doing that activity of just like then you're sort of relating to it as just
Right. That's true.
and pass on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's not talking
Right.
about
And let's just emphasize that with the next. Oh, sorry, it's not the next. Oh, with the previous quote. I think the previous quote expresses that the classical man is just a bundle of routine, ideas, and tradition, when he acts, he is translating every living moment in terms of the old.
Hmm.
So that's because for him, that's all tradition would be.
Yeah.
You know, for lack of a better term, but
Right.
but like but surely he would recognize the need to do that in terms of things that we do relate to as facts and can use as facts. For example, he's not going to say that every scientist has to like do all the experiments afresh, but he's saying as a way of relating to the knowledge, that's going to be an obstacle in your development if that's the sole way that you relate to it. And you're pointing out that there is room for rational compartmentalization in Judaism for when you're just like, let's say like, I don't know, let's say like halacha l'maisa, like just knowing what to do halachically, like you have to do that. That's different than the art of relating to a mitzvah and being perfected by it.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that, if you did it through just stale tradition, then that would be the wrong way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, like I somewhat disagree with your characterization of the Torah.
Okay.
Even though there are facts that you have to remember, doesn't mean that the process is a process of recalling facts and then saying them over. Like if say when Shemaya Anatomy says something and he'll quote it in the exact same words.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean he's quoting the exact same words because he is trying to get the quotation right. He's quoting the same words because he wants to express the ideas that are expressed in that particular lesson.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm not saying he doesn't understand what's going on.
Yeah, but I'm saying that changes the process that he's doing. He's not doing a process of quoting of recalling facts. He's doing a process of recalling the ideas, and the facts are tied.
If I could just take a distinction.
Meaning, just to make sure I'm understanding you right, meaning that it is more analogous to like, it's more analogous to like, I don't know if this is a good analogy, and this might open up other problems, which you can just ignore. Like if you are trying to recall someone's shiur through your notes that you read, your goal is not to get like the words of the note; it's to access the ideas that were embodied in your notes.
Yeah, I mean, but I do think that's in like the study of the mamar. But like when you're like, let's say like if you're giving over like yeah, obviously in a shiur you're gonna be discussing ideas. You're not gonna be like just stating facts. But like you could like there is a thing of like let's say I don't know doing the keys and just like getting facts. Like what's that? What's going on there?
Well, you're getting um you're getting preparatory knowledge. That's not that's not like that's what the essence of the story is.
Yeah, I mean,
And I'm saying it's not like that's like the same way that I think we would agree about sometimes if you're learning science you need to like read studies that you can know like the results of like previous experiments.
right.
And you don't like as you don't like do all the experiments for yourself.
Mhm.
And you need to get facts as like and that's like part of it.
Uh,
But doesn't mean that science is memorizing principles.
Can we maybe make a distinction? You're gonna remember what you're gonna say?
Yeah.
Okay. Between when you're learning versus when you're using knowledge. I mean, when you're using knowledge, you don't have to encounter it in. I mean, I realize it's sometimes there's gonna be like a gray gray areas. But let's say like when you're like I was just reading over Yom Tov that Bruce Lee started doing weight training. But he was doing weight training the way that weight trainers do it, and that led to building muscles in ways that made movement inefficient because they were just doing it for strength. So then what he did is he just studied those muscles and then recalibrated his workout in a way where it made like lean muscle that wouldn't interfere with any of his movements, but still got the benefits of weight training. When he did that, he's not like learning through the science, and encountering it in a discovery type way. He's just using, I'm sure he opened anatomy books and made recourse to facts. He's just using it in the same way when we do a halacha l'maisa, and in the learning process itself, sometimes you just have to make recourse to facts that you're using. But then sometimes when you're trying to understand, like when you're doing Talmud, then you're not just relating to them as facts.
Yeah.
But I think it is a distinction between protocol and
Yeah, that's what count. Yeah, I know what you mean by that, but yeah.
But I was say, because the core element of the Torah is Talmud and not the Torah called
Yeah. Well, yeah.
then saying like, well, I guess I'd say really the real difference is that there is a set of facts that you can't just override with your mind.
You
That's,
can override it.
yeah.
What do you mean?
Just like in science,
Like there's
Yeah.
it's given.
Right.
Yeah, you can.
right? Like
I'm saying there's
the corollary of like empirical data
Yeah.
that the knowledge is going to pertain to and emerge from.
Yeah. I guess it's the same way. Like if you're like, if you're studying, martial
Wolf.
arts.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's just a plain fact of the wolf. There's
Yeah.
only one way to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same way that if you're studying martial arts, you can come up with, a lot of like new ideas about combat, but you can't change the fact that like a hand is structured a certain way,
Right.
Sure.
like
Yeah, so I think right. So definitely. So in conclusion, there's the passing on of the facts.
Wait, you want conclusions now? I just want knowing. Yeah.
yeah. In no.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Like you have to like pass on the fact.
Yeah.
And that like would involve knowledge.
Yeah.
But then there's like the analyzing the facts and understanding those facts.
Yeah.
Isn't knowing.
And
Isn't
also,
knowledge.
right. And also in terms of, I think in the application of it, that also is not going to work if you're just doing it as a static thing. That's the ideal. Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, just to expound on this a little bit.
That's the difference between shot and drop. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think about that.
Yeah.
So like with the Masorah, I think that like everybody would agree that the point in passing down the Masorah is because that like we're saying like, well, this is what is absolutely true and the best way to live your life, and like we want to keep passing this on, and like the most I think everybody would agree that the most effective way to pass that on is to have like a full wholesome understanding of the Masorah,
Mhm.
not just passing on facts. Like
Mhm.
the more you relate to it as just static facts,
Mhm.
the harder of a time you'll have being able to like just kind of keep passing on. Like eventually it will get kind of
Well, I think there is an argument to be made the other way that there is an efficiency in just passing on like the raw knowledge, like in the, and maybe I have a misunderstanding of this also, but let's say like the Tanai and like people who just memorize brises, like there is a raw efficiency in just memorizing stuff. Efficiency not in terms of you understanding it like that, then you're done
Right.
carrying books, but like to be able to like have it available for people,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same way as printing books.
Right.
Books keeps it around, and yeah, there's going to definitely, you're subjecting it to risk if people don't understand what's being said in the books. But just the availability of the of potential knowledge
Right.
is to be passed on just through
Right.
non-knowing.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I can see that, but I guess just like I still I think based on that also like in terms of the sort of meaning like obviously it's good to understand what it is as opposed to just passing it on as
Yeah.
facts. But because it's just so much and like you can't necessarily understand it all
Mhm.
or in one moment just understand it all.
Right.
So like you are therefore based on your conviction that like this is truth, you're gonna have to have certain things where like you just relate to as facts
Yeah.
based on that premise, and like of course it's better if you understand it, but like
Right.
it doesn't like it's not making it any worse because relating to it as fact or relating to
Right.
it as fact because you acknowledge that like you can't necessarily understand in this moment, but you have this conviction that it's true, and so therefore
Right. I saw a great analogy of that. I don't know where I read this. It was bugging me. I read it over Shavuot somewhere. And I don't remember if it was a Jewish book or a non-Jewish book, but it said if a kid refused to eat bread until he knew how it was plowed and how it was planted and how like all the nutrition worked, then he would starve to death, and like I think that's like obviously understanding how bread nourishes you and how to make it,
it's a good thing.
it's a good thing, and like if everyone could do that, then that'd be great. But you just can't efficiently do that,
Right.
and still
Therefore,
like
you just have to trust that
Right.
it's good and just eat the bread
Right,
and
right.
from experiences or like that.
yeah.
Yeah, and then also one other point in terms of how this like this is one thing where like it a little confusing with Bruce Lee because he would say everything should just be this flowing knowingness and not relating to it as knowledge. But I feel like, and I don't know, obviously you know more about Bruce Lee than I do. So like I don't know if I can like actually say this, so I'm saying I'm not
Okay.
sure. But I feel like he would
I am
agree.
knowing about Bruce Lee. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I feel like um, he would agree, like meaning he obviously, or not obviously. I don't think that he like had like a text that he referred to as like absolutely true. But like if he
Yeah.
discovered a text like that, and if
Right.
he
That's
believed that
right.
to be the case, then I'm sure that he would say we must keep teaching this to
Yeah,
the people
so-
and preserve it in the best way possible. And that wouldn't contradict his thing about knowing
Right.
that he would still be
So
saying that too.
what this reminds me of is the traditionalists versus the rationalists.
Mm.
You know, that's kind of like a traditionalist argument, which is that you have the Masorah, and therefore
Mhm.
like you're operating differently than if we didn't have the Masorah, then the traditionalists would all be rationalists. And he doesn't like
Mhm.
he doesn't have a text, and so he is in a position where he's figuring out everything on his own.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I
Right.
think that's you're right, and I
Right.
don't know if that would change things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What exactly is the difference about having the absolute test?
I guess because you can.
Well, based on that premise, a person would be comfortable relating
Hmm.
to certain things within that text as just facts based on the premise that it's absolutely true, as opposed to I cannot accept anything unless I fully understand.
Like, let's just give the closest analogy, I think, just to illustrate it. If you have a tradition in martial art that something is supposed to be done this way, that tradition could just be entirely wrong. You know, so when you're locked into viewing it as knowledge, not only are you not relating to it in the proper way as a mind, but you're also just like pledging your allegiance to something that could just be completely baseless or wrong. Whereas if you had a Masorah, Mipia Gavura, so then yeah, there's the issue of are you knowing or are you relating to it as knowledge, and like are you being confined to it? But like there is a certain reliability that would give you a basis to building your life around this one thing, you know.
Right? Even if you don't understand every single
Right.
particular.
Right. The difficulty is that functionally there are so many different ways to relate to the Masorah that we do
Right.
have
Yes.
that I don't know practically what the difference is. I mean, obviously the difference is like the text of Chumash Torah and like
Right.
part of mitzvahs, or, you know, but
Right, yeah,
but in the practice it is going to be not as clean cut, you know.
right. But
Yeah.
what I think is also like, yeah, I mean, I feel like this helps in terms of like conflict between like Bruce Lee and Thor, because like meaning like obviously I can't say this for sure, but like if that's the case, and if he like meaning so it's not that like he's saying that all knowledge is bad,
Right.
just relating to knowledge in this way, would be bad. But if you have this conviction that it's absolutely true, then relating to knowledge in this way wouldn't necessarily be bad.
So I still think it would be bad because that's not the way that the mind should relate to knowledge, but it would have a purpose, it would have a use, it would have a use, yeah,
Uh-huh.
and it might be necessary, yeah.
Is there a difference between what he's talking about and what we're talking about in the story, because he's dealing with knowledge, not an application? He's being in the context of a fight, where he reacted to
Right.
that,
So that's also what I'm not sure about, because the overarching context is in the context of a fight, but I do think that this is his philosophy of knowledge in general, because like he talks about this in terms of relating to people as well. I mean, which is practical, but let's say like having a relationship with a person, you know, which is not just like applying stuff. It is like knowledge,
right.
you
So
know,
in a context like that, what is the lack of knowledge?
it's relating to the other person through preconceived ideas about the person, or through psychology, or through, you know, you're looking at the person through filters, you know, as opposed to like experiencing what is in front of you, and then knowing through the ever changing like living experience.
I'd say that once you do experience them accurately, like you could.
But that's what I'm saying. I don't know if you would agree that that's a thing, because it's
It's ever changing.
it's always changing. Yeah, and you're always changing.
You have to adapt even like.
Yeah.
But let's say you're talking about like an idea or something that doesn't change. Like, I don't know, like a law of gravity. or
Okay.
something.
Like things are what they are.
Yeah, or something, I don't know. Like something that's just like an immutable thing.
Yeah.
Then it wouldn't be ever. So how would that change? How do you
Well, that gets the question of what is reality, and you know, like is that like is that a proper model for viewing reality? Like there's like the idea, the unchanging idea underlying everything, you know? I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
I mean, if it were true, I mean, we could run it through the ringer, I don't know if that's an expression, right? Is if it were true, let's say like in math, it seems like that could be true,
Right.
you know? I sense that you would not think that that's correct, because even if that is true about a particular idea, your relationship to Chachma is ever changing, because, I mean, unless you could say that it's possible to fully know a branch of Chachma,
Right.
you know, but insofar as it's not, and I think it is reasonable to assume that it's not, then if you don't allow yourself to have that freedom of constantly looking at it through fresh eyes, then I think you're going to miss the knowledge. And that's what he's going to get to next, I think.
Mhm.
We'll revisit that question after we read the next couple. I was going to say halachos. Yeah. Partios, yeah. Yeah.
Did Bruce Lee have an opinion on like life after death, or like non-physical reality?
I haven't seen him write about religious stuff. I think he only related to it in terms of the its usefulness. That's the only context I've seen him like write about it, you know. Yeah, because like it's also unclear what the categories are. Like if you had to pin him to a certain religious, you know, ideologies, which he wouldn't like that word, then like Taoism and Buddhism are not exactly religions, but they do have metaphysical like premises. So like when he talks about the soul, for example, it's hard to tell whether that's just in terms of as a human being who's living, or whether that is making a statement about like the nature of the soul as like,
Right.
you know,
Right, because I mean,
that's the trouble with all the Eastern stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like if he had like that idea, then you could kind of say that everything that he's saying here about how it's ever changing, like that's this physical existence, which we would agree,
Right.
everything in this physical existence is ever
Mhm.
changing, but there can be a non-changing thing, like a fixed idea or something, and like that's just
So, you know, if you want to do homework,
yeah.
you can look in the book of Bruce Lee quotes that you're borrowing from me.
Okay.
And if they have
See what he
that,
says. I'll just read the whole book.
yeah, no, I think it's organized by topic.
Oh, okay.
So if you find
Oh,
topics that
interesting. Yeah,
relate to
yeah,
that, then you can report back, send screenshots.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I want to read the next couple of things all in a row, because I think they're all related. So let's go. We were at the additive process. Is that where we're at? So the additive process is merely a cultivation of memory, which becomes mechanical. Learning is never cumulative. It is a movement of knowing which has no beginning and no end. In martial arts cultivation, there must be a sense of freedom. A conditioned mind is never a free mind. Oh, yes, yeah. Conditioning limits a person within the framework of a particular system. And remember, just to refresh the facts here, that was Bruce Lee's Kiddush, is using no way as way, not limiting himself to a system, you know, when they had all these rigid systems in place beforehand. And that was like heretical in the martial arts world, you know, to break from the system. To express yourself in freedom, you must die to everything of yesterday. From the old, that's a good one. From the old, you derive security. From the new, you gain the flow. To realize freedom, the mind has to learn to look at life, which is a vast movement without the bondage of time, for freedom lies beyond the field of consciousness. Watch, but don't stop and interpret. I am free, then you're living in the memory of something that has gone. To understand and live now, everything of yesterday must die. Freedom from knowing is death. Then you are living. Die inwardly of pro and con. There is no such thing as doing right or wrong when there is freedom. A couple more. We'd have to go back, obviously. The fighter is to always be single-minded. Oh, sorry, yeah, I skipped something. When one is not expressing himself, he is not free. Thus, he begins to struggle, and the struggle breeds methodical routine. Soon he is doing his methodical routine as response rather than responding to what is. That's the most chilling statement of the ones that we're reading right now. That's you can catch yourself doing that, and it's frightening. That's like Joe's example with that the Rebbe Dotman. That's the example. Yeah.
It reminds me of and they did experiments with like birds, I think,
Yeah.
where they would take away their like ticks or something, and then they would just they would put like, oh, what was it? Sorry. They would basically like put the squirrels, the squirrel. They put squirrels in like this like cage,
Yeah.
and the squirrels would basically just like at a certain time of year, I think, they would start like just like making motions as if they were picking stuff up
Oh,
and
whoa.
like dragging it across the cage and
Wow.
like putting it down. And
Yeah.
something. It was something like that that like showed that everything they're doing is just basically an
Right.
instinct.
And that's what
And that's
people
we end up doing that.
do. Yeah. That's scary. The fighter is to always be single-minded with one object in view. To fight, looking neither backward nor sideways, he must get rid of obstructions to his forward movement, emotionally, physically, or intellectually. One can function freely and totally if he is beyond system. The man who is really serious, with the urge to find out what the truth is, has no style at all. He only lives in what is. Hold on, I just want to see. Oh, yeah. Hold on. Oh, yeah. No, we should stop now. No, there's an associative flow. What was it?
Just keep reading.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of ideas there. Okay. So let's just go back for a second here. So
I feel like we could learn each of these like initial concepts.
we should. Yes. Yeah. I think so. Also. Yeah. Yeah. That was, so the first one we read was, I think that was really part of the previous theme. The additive process is merely a cultivation of memory, which becomes mechanical. I feel like we came to that when we were talking about the previous one. Learning is never cumulative. It is a movement of knowing which has no beginning and no end. And I think everything we said about qualifying that, learning is not never cumulative. You know, like real learning is not cumulative, but it involves partaking of memory and accumulations of things, you know?
Because like real knowing is just like it's like a picture of how the world is. So like it's not like built up of like it's like it's like the difference between like Rarzooker and Rupisa. Like it's like a stripping away of things and seeing things clear.
Right.
It's not like building
Edifices. Yeah, right. That's interesting. That reminds me, did I tell you some Q&A, then Rebbe said one of the differences between Buddhism and Judaism? Did I tell you this?
No.
So I'm not saying this based on, I don't really know like Buddhism. I don't know Judaism either, but I know Buddhism even less. So I'm just taking his word for this. But he said in the models of knowledge, and clearly this is not what Bruce Lee's Buddhism is, because he's going to end up siding with the Judaism side. But he was saying, Rebbe was saying how Buddhism has this ideal of there are these eternal truths, and then the highest state is you are like one with those truths, and it is like, for lack of a better term, without motion or without movement. It's like you find repose in those eternal truths, and like that's enlightenment. Okay, but he said, what's Judaism's highest state is ahavas Hashem, is a yearning for knowledge, is always seeking to know more and to know beyond what you are. And that's not a state of repose. That's not a state of like being one with the truth. That's constantly like trying to get closer and closer. And like, if you want to use the stripping away of the veils, like stripping away veil after veil after veil after veil, you know, in the wrong. And I think that's, yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. How did I get to that? With the
and acknowledging that it never ends, meaning like
Yeah.
you can't get to the end. There is no end in this
right,
lifetime.
right.
Like, you can only keep going your entire life.
It is knowing. Oh, I just come with a drasha. I think I pointed this out initially, but this is drush. Okay, this is drush. There's a word. So someone who has chachma is a chacham. Someone who has bina is a navam, right? Or a mavian, right? Someone who has da'as. But there's no term for a like a dot, like a datan, you know.
Right.
Not datan or you know. Yodea is someone who's involved in knowing. yeah, no, but that's just a drasha. That's not real. Yeah, but
You're not. There's no person who.
You can be someone who is involved in knowing, but there's no like, you know.
Past tense.
There's no kind of a person that's like.
Yeah.
No.
Ball das. Yeah. It's a drasha. It's not. I didn't say it was a good drasha. It's just a drasha. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so I think that was part of the last thing. Okay, but then what was the next one is really where we started talking about the freedom thing. I just lost my place. This is on page
Martial
2.
arts, cultivation.
Oh yeah, there must be a sense of freedom. A conditioned mind is never a free mind. Conditioning limits a person within the framework of a particular system. Yeah. So this is the other thing that, like, let's talk about the Masorah again. But this is another struggle that we have to have, which is, I mean, if you have any breakthroughs in any sugya, then you find that this is the problem, right? Is that breakthroughs, or that was the thing holding you back on the breakthrough, is you had a certain way that you were conditioned based on superficial knowledge or based on experience of like looking at the area, and then the breakthrough comes from realizing that like I had to see past the conditioning and like see it fresh, and then like and not be limited by that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this concept of freedom being removed of constraints, or is it some positive ideas?
Good question. He has a positive idea, which he alluded to in one of the things we read. But we read like a bunch of them, just and then went back. He has an idea of expressing the self being like and self-actualization being the highest goal that you like what purpose of life is, and that is very tied to his idea of freedom. But I don't think that's what he's talking about here. He mentioned it at the bottom of that page.
Right.
When he's not expressing himself, he's not free. But that the whole idea of self-actualization, that's like the closest thing to like a purpose of life, in the way he says it.
And that's not synonymous with Judaism's purpose of life.
Oh,
Or is, I don't know, maybe it is.
that's a good question. I think it is.
Okay.
But I do think though that Judaism puts more emphasis on the common thing that makes us all human, and then you're self-actualizing based on your unique potentials and strengths and weaknesses, but as a human, I don't know what his his view of that is, but I think we'll encounter that later on. But right now, what was your question about? Oh, the positive dimension of it.
Yeah.
Right now, it sounds like he's just talking about the removal of a negative, removal of conditioning.
Right.
And the like conditioning limits a person within the framework of a particular system. That's the harm, right? Again, like in my example I gave last time, like if your whole martial arts thing revolves around circular motions, then like you're only going to think in circular motions. And then when you have oh, I just thought of something. Hold on. Example. So you heard of Musashi? Musashi was one of the greatest swordsmen who ever lived. It was in Japan. Almost legendary figure, but like actual legend in the sense of like, what was that?
Is that Kune Hanzo?
Yes.
Fascinating that.
And so I remember reading it. I read a bunch of other stuff other than Bruce Lee, but Bruce Lee emerged as the one who was best at doing this. But so in this book that was written in like maybe 1500s, 1600s, he's talking about how the superiority of guns to arrows, and with an arrow, then like you can see. Oh no, I'm gonna mess this up. I have to review it. Sorry,
Okay.
I backtracked the example. I thought I had an example of this. Yeah,
Maybe I'm just not getting his system of thought here. But
yeah.
what do you think there is something ideal of having a framework of a particular system, just like an ideal system? Like you can optimize your framework of thought?
So I think I think that gets to the core of what makes them different, which is that if you have a system, then the system is going to limit you.
But not if
Is
it's
it a reality
ideal.
system?
No, even the ideal system is going to limit you, and the proof is Torah, right? Torah and the laws of nature are the most perfect systems that are out there, but they limit you in a way that's why. I mean, this is according to the Rabbag makes this link, but like everyone holds by these facts. But that's why you need like a navi to be able to change Torah when Torah is not doing its job in a particular area, or you need nisim. Like because you could say, well, if the Torah were a perfect system, it would work out in every case, and it doesn't work out in every case. And the Torah doesn't perfect everybody either.
That's in terms of the system affecting what its purpose is. But in terms of knowing the system, if reality is
Right.
a fixed system, then shouldn't you be possible to have a good
Yeah, well,
model?
that's getting to like what you were saying is if ideas are fixed things or if reality is a fixed system. Yeah, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. Like even if it is a fixed system,
So yeah, so what's the thing that's non-physical? Like what's that? If it's not a
I don't know.
things that are
Yeah, I mean, I'm really not sure, right? Because if, you know, like again, like maybe the whole paradigm of like I think Feynman has a thing about that of like everyone's looking for like a theory of everything, and he was like, well, why are you assuming that there is a theory of everything? Like maybe there is no theory of everything. Maybe it's just like layers of onions going all the way down or something. He says like something very Feynman-esque type thing, like that doesn't make sense, you know. But ultimately you are going to get, I mean, this is something that Judaism does hold, is you are going to get down to God.
Yeah.
That you can't know. And there's and what the interface between God and physical reality is like. I mean, we call that malachim, but like what that is, I don't know if that's going to look like a fixed system or if that's going to look like something else.
Right, but it doesn't take away from the like idealness of the system, though.
It doesn't, but it does in the process of learning about it. Because I think this is what I misunderstood your question at first, meaning we are agreeing that in terms of in practice, in practical systems, then systems will always limit you. Is that, and your question is,
that, like they will limit the amount of actions that you get. Like you can't fly or whatever. Is that what you're saying? Like
oh, look at page 3. Well, let's read the first couple. If any style teaches you a method of fighting, then you might be able to fight according to the limit of that method, but that is not actually fighting. If you meet the unconventional attack, such as one delivered with broken rhythm, your chosen patterns of rhythmical classical blocks, your defense and counterattack will always be lacking pliability and aliveness. If you follow the classical pattern, you are understanding the routine, the tradition, the shadow. You're not understanding yourself. Okay, that gets into a different thing. But yeah, but that's what I mean by like you're going to have your set of, you know, like 3 tools that you use, and if you meet something that is not in that category, or if one of your tools is compromised, you know, like what are you going to do? If you're a kickboxer and someone breaks your legs, like then you're going to be stuck, you know. Whereas if you're cultivating using all things as tools, then you're going to have a certain pliability, you know. Yeah.
So this first one where he says, if any style teaches you a method of fighting, then you might be able to fight according to the limit of that method.
Yeah.
That's assuming that the limit of that method is not the highest limit, and like you could be doing better than the max of that method.
So I don't think that's what he means. I don't think it's quantitative, and that's why I'm saying it's every system.
Okay.
Like even if you have the best system, then it still is a system, which means that it's going to have certain principles and certain rules. And if you limit yourselves to those, then you won't be able to do stuff that is not in line with that, unless you have this fantasy that there are systems that work out for all particulars, but that's not a system anymore.
Right. So, but is he positing that you should be able, or the best way to do it, like it, meaning, so he's not saying that that you could be doing better than the method. How is he not saying that you could be doing better than the method?
He is.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, that's why he's against methods and systems, because the
Right. So, so I don't.
Maybe misunderstanding the question.
Yeah, isn't that so? Yeah, so maybe I think I'm misunderstanding the answer, because isn't my question is that like he is assuming that you can be doing better than the method.
Yeah.
But if the method is the best possible thing, then you cannot be doing better than the method. That assumption is false.
So I'm saying, yeah, I'm saying, I got mixed up with the word false there. I'm saying that even the best method, because it is a method, then it is by its nature limiting. So what's better than the best method is beyond method.
But can a method help you, like help direct you? Like if you didn't have any method.
Yeah, well,
doing.
That's the 3 stages of cultivating the art: is learn the rules, master the rules, dissolve the rules. You know, that definitely a person who does not know how to punch is not going to punch effectively, and they're going to break their thumbs, or you know. So you learn how to punch, then you master it in terms of you do it perfectly, but then the true master is no longer bound by those principles and will deviate from them when the situation calls for it, or will develop something better, or will, like I was just reading that Bruce Lee had he was very nearsighted, and one leg was shorter than the other, and he was also shorter. I think he was 5'7" or something like that. And like because of these things, then like certain methods that were advocated in certain styles didn't fit him, especially let's say like the leg thing, So like if the method is designed for people with normal legs, then I mean another example in sports like Michael Phelps, right? He has that weird like the Olympic swimmer. Didn't he have like a weirdly like long body and like some weird thing? And like, but if you've got personal circumstances that are different, then you would then you get to the point where you learn these methods, and then if you continue to stick to them and didn't like tailor them to your own situation, then that would be limiting you and making you more ineffective.
So how does that apply to
Yeah.
like in Torah? No matter how advanced you get, you still stick to the system as best you can.
Are you talking about the practice of Torah, or are you talking about the learning of Torah?
Oh, I guess practice, but I guess you're saying it's.
So the practice of Torah definitely this supports, because in the practice of Torah, there's I mean, this is why I like Avram Ben Ramam's paradigm of the derech ha'am and the derech ha'yachid. So he basically says the derech ha'am is halacha, okay, and it's called the derech ha'am because it's equal for Moshe Rabbeinu and it is for us, right? Moshe sits in a sukkah the same way that we do, Then the derech ha'yachid is keeping the mitzvos in a manner that fulfills their objectives. And he says there's infinite levels and there's infinite particulars. And the example he gives, which I really like, is I don't know if I've written this up, but so let's say you have a guy who just keeps Shabbos and he sleeps all of Shabbos. Okay, so he's not doing any Isser, but he's not gaining any perfection from Shabbos. Okay, then you have the guy who keeps the halachos of Shabbos and rests. Okay, then you have the guy who keeps the halachos of Shabbos, rests, and then when he says Kiddush, he remembers, oh, God created the world. Okay, then you've got the guy who does all of that and who actually thinks about the concept of and the implications of the fact that the world was created. Then you got the guy who does all of that and actually studies physics on Shabbos, and then you've got the highest level guy, which he says that he's all of his energy is involved in like probing the secrets of the universe, and he's like not even hungry anymore, and he's like sounds go and he doesn't hear them, and like people pass before him and he doesn't see. He's just totally involved in knowledge, So that's something that is not legislated because you can't legislate perfection, But so the halacha sets up the framework, but then how much you use the halacha for its intended purposes is a very personalized journey. And if you try to regiment it, then you get into trouble, and it's by its nature, there's lots and lots of different ways to do it. But then by your nature, like maybe you are on the level where the way you relate to kashrus, you can go beyond, again, with kashrus, you have the guy who just keeps kosher, but then pigs out. And then you've got the guy who keeps kosher, but then restrains his taivas. You've got the guy who restrains his taivas in line with health. Like that. These are all different levels of keeping kosher. And maybe like for one person has an easier time, like with their diet, and they can go in the derech liyachid there. But then when it comes to like science, then they're not really into like using Shabbos for science, and like they're never going to get very far in that. So it's very. So that's how you keep this. That's how you apply this to halacha, is like everyone has to keep halacha in a baseline way, but then you have to engage in the halacha in a way that takes you on your path to perfection at the level where you're currently at, or like your next developmental level.
Right, the system itself, why is that? I think someone would come to this conclusion like, oh, I like whatever, I have to dissolve the.
Right. So if it were up to, I think this is where the point that Avi was making comes in, which is that if we did not have a system from the one who created man, then there'd be much more reason to like do away with stuff really quickly. But then also there's the Masorah element that part of our existence is not just for your own perfection, it's to perpetuate the system of perfection in the nation. And that is a cost, so to speak, of being in the Jewish people. I mean, it's a benefit also, but the cost is that you are limited by the system, which is a tremendous benefit. But you're going to have to. You have no choice about whether to keep halakha, and even if it's detrimental to your perfection, based on your own unique qualities, you can't just like do away with it, But yeah, that is something that we have to do, and like the Avos didn't have to do that, And I think there's arguments to be made that that is for your perfection as well. You know,
even if it's bad for you.
yeah, meaning in the same way that I think Bruce Lee would say that raising a family and teaching children takes away from your personal freedom, but as a human being, it is a good thing to do, and it does bring you other perfections, even though it takes away from your circumstantial freedom. So I think, same thing with Torah. Like it's you can't choose to like not do things, but there are benefits in being in that situation also. Yeah.
Definitely did write a blog
On
Definitely.
oh okay yeah,
Yeah,
all right.
pink hair.
Oh, pink hair, yes.
Yeah, definitely, and compulsive
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, that was
Yes.
good. Where would it be without you? I have to look it up. Yeah. 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 Was there another question on the table, or was that okay? So let's go back to, we were going back to that. Okay, so we had conditioning limits person within a framework of a particular system. To express yourself in freedom, you must die to everything of yesterday. From the old, you derive security. From the new, you gain the flow. Okay, so I'm gonna use an example that used to not be controversial. It is kind of controversial now, but not so much so that I won't stop the recording. Is Louis C.K. Okay, so as a comedian, and I don't know how much you've seen Louis C.K.'s comedy. He's very funny. Most comedians, so there's this, I forgot what it was called. There was a show that it was Louis C.K., Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, and Ricky Gervais. Okay, and they were talking about comedy. And I think there was one point where they asked, "How much of your material do you change from season to season, like when you're doing stand-up?" So I think, if I remember, this a long time ago that I saw, I think Chris Rock changed like 5% of his material, and like Jerry Seinfeld would change like 10 or something, whatever. Louis C.K. would scrap his entire routine every year, and go through the process of writing new stuff. And it's, you got to if you hear Jerry Seinfeld talk about comedy, he's like, it is the most like live feedback of any, like if they don't laugh, then it's not funny. Like, so like to put yourself through the trying out of new jokes, is a very painful process. And then when you get stuff that works, you want to use it for as long as you can. But like Louis C.K. would scrap everything and just create the new routine from the ground up, and it would be very, very painful. But like, there is a lot of security in like doing the old stuff that works. And like, I can definitely relate to that in terms of teaching the same high school classes every year, that like, just because of the sheer number of classes I taught, then I didn't have the luxury to completely scrap every curriculum every year. So I would just I would do two things. Is I would re-examine everything afresh and in light of these students, and then try to teach it fresh based on them, but also re-examine my understanding of the material. But like, sometimes it would be good to just, okay, we're going to scrap everything and just start from scratch again, and
Like you tried to do it.
yes, and that was the thing that didn't work, was just the time and the format pressure. Like I do think I would have if it was just a chavrusa, and I didn't have the time pressure, I think I would have arrived at something new, but because it was ripe for that. But yeah, I just now realized, were you talking about stopping Kohelet, or were you talking about when I came up with the theory of Kohelet?
Oh.
Because that's what I had to do, come up with the theory of Kohelet, so scrapping it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It works then, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I thought you were referring to
Yeah,
this, it's
that's
stopping it.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I had thought of a practical way that you could do this.
Mhm.
Like whenever something like another situation comes up, you think like I guess a person could think, how is this situation different from what I've seen before, and how does that difference change things?
Right. That definitely is easier because you get a
Yeah.
hook then, right?
Yeah, I mean, like it's not possible to have for in every situation to completely scrap what you're
Right.
what you like all your thinking and think fresh.
Right.
And if it is like then
Then that'd be the best way to do
yeah.
it. Yeah.
But like when individuals like when you're having like frequent individual situations, each of those I think how is it different and how does that change things?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to read a quotation, which I might have read last time. Yeah.
What does he mean by the flow?
I will look back that in a second. Hold on just a second here. I think I might have read this.
Oh, for that.
Yes, that's the way he says. Yeah, it's usually it's the way he
Yeah,
says.
exactly.
Oh, hold on.
Is that that's a Greek thing, not an Eastern thing? That like there's static ideas.
Oh, it's definitely a Greek thing. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so I don't know.
Literally,
I can't find this.
that there's static idea that exists independently.
It's an Aristotelian thing specifically, right? I mean, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I guess Platonic also, but in
Right.
different ways. Yeah,
No, yeah. So okay.
yeah. I mean, again, I don't know what aspect of Buddhism. You're asking about like Rebbe's,
Yeah,
but I think,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I don't know where you got that from. What was your question of the flow?
Flow, yeah.
Oh yeah,
That,
yeah.
from the new you get the flow.
So I think the flow. Oh, that fits in really nicely with what you're saying, Isaac. From the new, you got the flow, meaning opening your mind to noticing what is new or what's different, and then using that as a trailhead, as it were.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the flow, I think, is what he's talking about of the knowing,
Uh-huh.
of the interacting with the dynamic reality. I was gonna say one thing. Oh yeah. This, I think, though, the other option is to look at the same stuff. And this is what I was talking about with the spiral curriculum on at the meal. Which, do we have the spiral curriculum talk yet, or is this just okay? So there's two types of curricula in like subjects. There's linear and spiral. Okay, linear curriculum would be like in math, where like first you learn your numbers and counting, and then you learn like addition, subtraction, then you learn like algebra, then you learn arithmetic, algebra. And so it's linear because when you're done with one page, you go on to the next, and when you're done with that, you go on to the next, and you never go back. Right? Spiral is, you have a picture, so here. Okay, so the Moadim is an example of a spiral curriculum. So you have Pesach, okay, then you have Shavuos, and then you have Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippurim, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, and then Pesach. So you're at the same point in the spiral, but you're up a different level now. Why? Because if you relate to Pesach in the right way, then it protected you and changed you in certain ways, which made you relate to Shavuot in a different way, which made, and you go through the whole curriculum so that when you get to Pesach the next year, you are a different person, but you're examining the same ideas and going over the same mitzvos, but you're getting something out of it that's different because you are a changed person. And that's by design. And and the Moadim is the best example of this because it is cyclical in terms of the calendar. Theoretically, though, Kriya Shema every day is like this, and Tefillah every day is like this also. Just harder to do because the changes aren't going to be as drastic because you're doing it every day, But yeah, and so that's another example of like when you're saying you must die to everything of yesterday. We don't do that by like only doing matzah once and then never coming back to it. We do that by encountering matzah the next year, but you're a different person now. So hopefully when you learn the ideas about matzah and then you eat matzah, you relate to it differently. And that's I think like that's one of the cool things where I think Judaism is in line with what the type of learning that Bruce Lee advocates, but it's through a different method, which is it's through encountering the same stuff and the same regimen, but you are different and you're experiencing with fresh eyes and a fresh mind, Yeah.
That's the benefit of having yearly things opposed to every all the time.
Right. Or every 7 years if you really want to. Yeah. Yeah.
Just a like definition question.
Yeah.
Platonic in the context that you just used it.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what context it was, but I know it wasn't in the context of like, or I think it wasn't in the context of like a man having a platonic relationship with a woman. So those two different words.
They came from the same thing, but that's used in a different way now. Yeah, from meaning like the world of unchanging forms and ideals, which is a part of Plato's philosophy, which I assume is connected to his philosophy on relationships, just not in a direct way. It's the same. Yeah.
Platonic came from Plato.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So those are two ideas that both came from Plato, but one became a relationship term. Yeah. Yeah.
When you said spiral, I had a visualization of a spiral going in like
Like a downward spiral.
Yeah, downward
Yeah,
spiral,
yeah.
just being tighter and tighter.
Yeah, there's an
Yeah.
upward spiral. Yeah. Okay. Then he says, to realize freedom, the mind has to learn to look at life, which is a vast movement without the bondage of time, where freedom lies beyond the field of consciousness. No idea what that means. Watch, but don't stop and interpret. I am free, then you're living in the memory of something that has gone. To understand and live now, everything of yesterday must die.
That's interesting that it seems like you're saying like if you are reflecting
Yes.
on that you're free,
Yeah.
then you're putting yourself into this category of like a free.
Yes, and you're arresting the movement and
Yeah.
then like looking back at it. You know, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't. Meaning, it's like I think the example we're used to thinking of this idea with is happiness.
Mhm.
Like if you stop to, or let's say lishma, that's gonna be the example. If you're like, if you catch yourself being like, oh yeah, I'm learning lishma, suddenly then you're not, you know. So like he's saying, like if you are saying, I have attained freedom, now you're like conceiving of yourself through this category, which means that you're not actually free. I don't know. That's the movie's making. I don't know what the significance of it is, and I know we're talking about like, I don't get the connection between this and what came before and what's coming after.
Oh, I'm not sure I understand the statement.
Yeah. Because you know what? Right.
Well, unless freedom means not like yeah. So if so, I don't know. Yeah, if like isn't that I mean isn't that putting you that's isn't that using a deep box of constraints and or the box of being outside of constraints?
I think I
And saying
understand
that you're not in it.
I think I understand the paragraph in the way that might answer that question.
Yeah.
I think what he's saying is that you should, when you're like living life, you shouldn't be um, trying to analyze and categorize your experiences
Mhm.
as you're experiencing them. And if you think I am free from that like from that phenomenon of like categorizing what's going on, then that is a categorization of it.
Right. What's the what? So what? Like, what's the like? What's the not? Um. Good question.
Like you're just relating to the thing as the thing.
Yeah.
Not as
Yeah. Not like
Not through
not in that-
ideas.
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you're saying that if you're saying I am free, then you're relating to yourself through the idea of freedom.
Yeah.
Or through the category. What? Yeah, no,
Let's just reread the next two, because he elaborates there. Freedom from knowing is death.
oh man.
Freedom from knowing, meaning because knowing is good.
And
This is confusing, right?
wait, knowing is good. Also.
Freedom from knowledge,
That's
not
what
freedom
he-
from knowledge.
Yeah, and freedom from knowing
Knowing is death.
is death. Then you are living. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Die inwardly of pro and con. There's no such thing as doing right or wrong, and there's freedom. Well, that I get. So this reminds me of, I think I said this last time. Yeah.
Are you first? I just interrupt.
The Ryan Lockwood always used to say that there's no methodology of thinking, right? That when you're actually thinking, to actually be thinking is not, there is no methodology. And if you think that there is methodology, then that's going to like infringe upon your thinking. Yeah, I gave a specific example of which one to do, but now I'm saying like in terms of as a universal, like there's no methodology of thinking. Yeah.
When he says die inwardly of pro and con, it reminds me of drama on the Itzadas.
Yes.
That like when you there's sort of like a level of distortion that we have of like seeing things as good or bad,
Right.
as opposed to true or false.
Yeah. Yeah. The way that Rabbi Sachs always used to, my Rabbi Sachs always used to explain the world of Tov and Ra versus the world of Emes and Sheker was with the Newton example, which I feel like I might have quoted before also. With like he says, you have the guy who sees an apple fall from the tree, okay, and he says, oh, I'm hungry. This is food. Another guy sees an apple fall from the tree and says, oh, this is a commodity. I can sell these and make money. And another guy sees the apple fall from the tree and it's like, oh, there's my enemy, Susie. I can throw this at her and it's a weapon, And then you have a person who like doesn't have any desire towards the apple. So it's like, this is nothing to me. And then you have Newton who sees the apple fall and he comes up with his theory. I know that's not a real story or whatever, So the question is like, what makes Newton different, than all these other people? So these other people are relating to the apple strictly in terms of Tov and Ra as a pleasure-seeking animal, and therefore they're only going to see it in those terms, and that's going to limit what they perceive. But Newton is seeing it as a Tzelem Elohim. He's just perceiving it as everything that he perceives is a manifestation of Chachmas Hashem, and he just wants to understand what that is. And so it's not through personal lenses, it's not through pros and cons, and that's why like he's able to see the lawfulness in it. So like I think that is similar. I mean that's what you were saying about the pro and con, the Tov and the Ra thing. But I'm saying that when you're involved in learning, then you can't be mapping out your steps ahead of time about like what should this look like, or should this not look like, or is this good, or you just have to be thinking. Yeah.
And the other thing, I think that's an important fact of mine.
Right, but well, okay, they're not true in the sense that that's what it is, right? Meaning what Newton has is that's what it is not food. That's not the definition of the thing.
Well, it's something that'll satiate you. That's
Yes, I can use this for food.
that wouldn't be overall.
That wouldn't be that would be more accurate, right? Meaning that this is a property of the thing. Yeah.
But then if you said like I want to be like I'm hungry and I don't want to be hungry, well, no, still. Yeah, I don't know. At what point? Yeah, well, when do you stop eating in that world of Mr. Jagger?
I mean, I think the problem is, I mean, we have to go into that, Tokyo, but I think the problem is when you're defining the thing based on you, as opposed to recognizing it as an objective reality that can benefit you in some way.
Oh, okay. So you're saying, when you say this will satiate me, you said that was.
Yeah, I think that is something that is true, and that's not a distortion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just what you were saying about there being no methodology of thinking.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of this morning, how I had like the 3 questions I wanted that I was like, we should try to answer these 3 questions for each plus like of like, what's the phenomenon, what's the practical idea, and what's the audience.
Mhm.
And like, while those are like sensible questions to answer,
Mhm.
trying to specifically like lift the questions and then try to answer them would have stunted the organic
Right,
process.
exactly. Yeah. And again, that's not to say that you should never do that. It's just to say that is not free thinking, like that's not, and that free thinking is gonna be the best kind of thinking, in terms of results. The other example I think someone gave last time is like with the pivot point theory in Tehillim, that it's very useful to have a method, but if we were to restrict ourselves to that and say it has to be this and like cram everything to that thing, then that's going to stunt the search for truth, yeah. Okay. This other one, this is the one I said was the scary one. When one is not expressing himself, he is not free. Thus he begins to struggle, and the struggle breeds methodical routine. Soon he is doing his methodical routine as response rather than responding to what is. It's scary in the fact that we do this with people all the time.
What do you mean?
That you have a certain way of relating to somebody, and whether it's in the context of like a family member, or whether it's like a friend, or whether it's like the average a normal person on the street, and you fall into these patterns of how you relate to the person, and then it just becomes you doing your patterns at them and them doing their patterns at you, and you're not actually like interacting with them, and then that leads to a bunch of conflicts.
Right.
Wait, which thing?
I think you're talking about the
Oh yes, yeah. I wasn't even thinking about that right now. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And what's the struggle? Why is it being a struggle?
Yeah. You think it's struggle breeds methodical routine.
And why does struggle, like, how does methodical routine help struggle?
I think he's saying. Oh, you mean yeah?
Like, in
Not
general,
actual
why
help.
is that a solution? Like,
Well, I don't think he's saying it's a solution. I think he's saying it's bad. It comes as a result of that. Yeah. Meaning you think it's going to be a solution. Yeah.
right, so I guess why do you think it should be a solution?
Yeah. I think it still comes from that thing of taking security in the old, and not having like it is so much easier to not have to actually like listen to the other person and actually like see what are they feeling, what are they thinking, like
Right.
how are they reacting to me, and then like actually like having a real like talk or a real conversation, or like a real like getting to know that person, as opposed to just like, oh, like like I'm I could just default back to the way I've related to this person all the time, and just like we could just like play our parts, and then yeah.
So why does the struggle come from not being free? I think saying like
Yeah. So we need to understand that connection, right? Is the not being free,
not expressing yourself.
that we gotta understand, right? When you're not expressing yourself, you're not free, because then you're gonna be, if you're not expressing yourself, it's gonna be because you're trying to play a certain part, or you're trying to conform to a certain expectation of some sort,
Oh.
right?
Um,
Because if you were completely expressing yourself, then
can you this? Oh, it's not about the end. Yeah, that. I guess I'm confused. Still confused by freedom.
it does. Yeah. So like,
No, I'm still confused what it means by freedom.
meaning okay, let's work through an example. Like let's talk about like an artist, okay? Like there, again, you see this all the time with like the artists in any field, whether it's like music or painting or whatever, is that they are told you're not supposed to do this, okay? And they have an idea about how they like that. This is what I see as being beautiful. This is what I have to do, and then they do it, and then it's great, right? But let's say they didn't do it, so now they have something they want to express, and then they're holding it in, and that's going to lead to struggle, right?
You want to express. You want to do something or express.
Yeah.
Also, you didn't expressing yourself like that. You didn't doing something that really fun, something like
Yeah.
and that naturally can result as well.
Yeah.
That's any. Would that be any like desire?
Yeah. See, this gets into a question of like what exactly is the self, right? Because it doesn't mean like I want to murder someone. I'm just going to murder, like
Right.
yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, Jakob.
Isn't an artist almost like too good an example? That's the case where some expression is almost like what you're trying to do. Let's say it's a fight, right?
Right.
But you're beholden to what the other guys do. You can't like it wouldn't be ideal.
Right.
Like it's time, like if you like know you wanna like throw a punch, it's like when you wanna have a fight, you're not gonna throw that kind of punch, and you're not gonna throw that punch.
Right, but it's
It's like
like
you don't do that. You're not.
Right. There are constraints because you're in a physical reality that,
Right.
and a physical situation that has that. Right. Yeah. Yeah. What does it mean?
I don't think that you're limiting the way that nothing is all. I don't think like I'll fly
Right.
my head.
Right.
I don't think that going to mean that like if you're not expressing.
Right. So what are the parameters that he's talking about here?
When you know like it's infinite reality, it's part of the infinite way. One of those different things you can add to the constraints.
Right.
That's fine.
Yeah, that fits in with what he's saying for the next one, which is the fighter is to always be single-minded with one objective in view, to fight, looking neither backward nor sideways. He must get rid of obstructions to his forward movement, emotionally, physically, or intellectually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, and the fight, the guy knows the reality of the fight. But you can add and that's the fucking reality of the fight. And not,
Right. Yeah, but it is interesting he puts it in terms of expressing himself. Does not seem necessary for this particular thing. I mean, that's part of his philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
oh, I'm sure what you mean by saying
Yeah, we have to look into that. You want to stop here for tonight? Okay.
that.
Yeah, I think I hit my tired point early.
Cool.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I guess my prediction